The following featured presentation is part of the Skywalking Network.
This is what you can look forward to on episode 490 of Skywalking Through Neverland.
The question I've always had is, how do you get these pieces?
The reason this is so wonderful is just because it's so specific. So it is the sand trooper in the film who the Jedi mind trick is performed upon and who tells Obi-Wan to move along, move along.
Move along. Move along.
Jennifer Aniston, you
Come
have
on,
an
look at that
amazing body. Just show it all off.
You are the Indiana Jones of movie memorabilia.
Are you ready?
Welcome to Neverland.
Here we go!
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome. Disneyland is your land.
When I first made Star Wars, everybody in Hollywood said, well, this is a movie Disney should have made.
You're more than just fans. You're family.
Best day ever!
It's about family, and that's what's so powerful about it.
Hey.
When you use a bird to write with, it's called tweeting.
When we visit the world of Disney, we never grow old. It's a Peter Pan, Never Land that keeps us young in heart.
This is Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you are skywalking through Neverland. I have a good feeling about this.
Hey, Skywalkers! You know that money you've been putting away, saving for something special? Well, that something special is now here. Do you want to own Jar Jar's eyes? Do you want to own Michael Jackson's Thriller tour jacket? Do you want to own Freddy Krueger's hat? Then listen very closely. But until then, we want to welcome you back to Skywalking Through Neverland. I am Richard Woloski, but now everyone please say hello to my sweetie wife Sarah, who just teased me with a gingerbread latte.
Oh, this is what we're having for snack time today. Very excited.
Yes.
All right, well, we are your enthusiastic podcast destination for the many decades of your Star Wars, Disney, Marvel, and gingerbread latte fandom. So imagine a big Wookiee hug from us. And a little sprinkle of pixie dust.
And a sip of
Gingerbread latte for our family of Skywalkers.
Oh my goodness.
Wow, that's just the theme of this episode.
The show's got a new theme.
Yep.
I guess then Halloween season is now officially over. We've gone from pumpkin spice lattes to gingerbread lattes.
It's true, except our house is still Halloween. It will probably remain so through Thanksgiving, and I'm very happy with that. Yeah. All right, well, we are live on the Skywalking Through Neverland YouTube channel right now. So welcome, Skywalkers, everyone watching us live. And we love it when you subscribe to our channel and hit the little bell for notifications. In fact, welcome, Glenn Stein is right here with us now. Now, in this episode, we will speak with Brandon Alinger from Propstore. He gives us the lowdown on all the amazing memorabilia that will be auctioned off starting November 14th. So there are items from Star Wars, Gremlins, Ghostbusters, Hook, Spider-Man, Princess Bride, Cleopatra, and so many more. He gives us a peek behind the curtain of what goes into these auctions, and the stories behind these items is simply fascinating.
Now, this is the first of 2 episodes this week. We have 2 time-sensitive episodes. One here with Brandon Alinger, who is going to excite us with all the amazing memorabilia for the Propstore auctions coming up on, like you said, November 14th. And our good friend Bob Miller, we'll do another episode with him because he's got a great Batman the Animated Series book series coming out. And, well, we had the week off because we were very tired after Halloween. But then we created a trivia game show.
Yes.
A YouTube trivia game show.
That you can do when you have time to kill, when you're maybe on a road trip or waiting in line at a theme park,
or
things
just
like that.
Or just want to learn something
or
new.
Just want to test your trivia knowledge.
Yes.
So those are going to come out every Saturday on YouTube only.
We really want to grow in the world of trivia. We have so many trivia categories that we want to share them with you now instead of waiting for a convention to come up.
Yep.
All right, now we are being sponsored by Small World Vacations, and they are a diamond level Disney vacation planner travel agency that can help you book your trip to a Disney park around the world or on a Disney cruise. We'll be calling them very, very shortly. Best of all, this service is free of charge. So head over there to smallworldvacations.com for a no obligation price quote and tell them Skywalking Through Neverland sent you and give them a gingerbread latte. Either one of those will work.
Now, we are recording this episode from Long Beach, California on November 8th, 2024. So, Richard, what happened today in Star Wars history?
Well, we gotta wish a very happy 98th birthday to Ted Burnett, who was born on this date, November the 8th, 1926. And Ted Burnett plays Warder, the cantina bartender in A New Hope. And he was brought in through the Ugly Agency, who cast those with unusual appearances.
Yep, they were called Ugly Models Agency. I remember reading about that. Like, wow.
So a lot of the cantina patrons was cast from the Ugly Models Agency, including Ted Burnett. Now, he was uncredited in Star Wars, but those eagle-eyed fans such as myself, well, we caught him in the book The Art of Star Wars.
That's it.
Next to sketches of the cantina creatures, there was the bartender. Next to the bartender, it said Ted Burnett.
Perfect.
This was a great trivia question. A question I would ask all the, when you get together with all these Star Wars fans, and each one would see who knew the most. I'd say, yeah, so who played the bartender in Star Wars? No one ever knew. Now, if you're wondering where else you've seen Ted Burnett, he was in the TV series Larry Grayson and Doctor on the Go. And one of his last appearances was Morphing Man in the Godly and Cream music video Cry.
This is from 1985?
Yes. Godly and Cream, they were producers. They produced a lot of Duran Duran stuff. And I'm ashamed that I never recognized Morphing Man as the cantina bartender.
Propstore's entertainment memorabilia live auctions are a fantastic way for you to own a piece of the movies and television shows you love. With over 1,800 lots in this year's London auction, we're going to start by taking a look at Ridley Scott's Gladiator. Or the 1963 Oscar-winning classic Cleopatra with the costumes of Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. And for the first time ever, a rare glimpse into the archive of special effects legend Ray Harryhausen, with Ray's hand-drawn artwork, his personal annotated scripts, and most amazingly of all, the models, castings and sculpts actually made by Ray Harryhausen. A remarkable collection of spaghetti western costumes, including these from The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. And it wouldn't be a Propstore auction without Star Wars. This is the famous mind trick helmet used in the Move Along sequence of A New Hope. We also have a Sand Trooper costume from the same movie. Our next London auction is on November the 14th through to the 17th, and the catalogue is available now at propstore.com.
Get out your checkbooks because the next Propstore auction is coming up in London from November 14th through the 17th. There is so much entertainment memorabilia from Back to the Future, Batman, Ghostbusters, Gremlins, Jason and the Argonauts, Harry Potter, and Star Wars. Lots and lots of Star Wars.
Here with us now is author of Star Wars Costumes, the original trilogy, and the Chief Operating Officer of Propstore, Brandon Alinger. Hey, Brandon!
Hi guys, how you doing?
We are doing very well, and we are so excited to have you on because we got a million questions when it comes to these Propstore auctions. And I gotta say, we are so excited every time we see a new one pop up to see the new batch of costumes, props, and scripts from iconic TV shows and movies. Now, the question I've always had is, how do you get these pieces?
Well, that's the tricky part, to be honest. I mean, that is one of the big challenges of what we do is going out and curating the content, finding the material that's going to be in each auction. Star Wars has always been a focal point for us. It's a collecting focus. There's a lot of collectors that are very interested in all the Star Wars films, the older films, the more recent films, the prequels, everything really. So, the material in our auctions comes from a number of different sources. First and foremost, we have a long-standing network of collectors and just people that are in this game and have been in this game for a long time. Collectors sometimes turn pieces over, especially when they're bringing new things into their own collections. That will sometimes give them a license to let something go that they've held on to for a long time. We're also regularly out there just knocking on doors, networking with people, working with people within the film industry, talking to studios and production companies themselves. There's not much Star Wars material that's come directly from studios and production companies, although it sometimes does. We had a few years ago a Stormtrooper helmet from, I can't remember if it was The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi, but it was something that Lucasfilm had donated to benefit a charitable cause specifically. And just working with production sources, places like rental houses. There are still things that turn up in industry rental houses. This auction, I should say, has a great collection of wardrobe pieces that came out of an Italian costume house that have literally been on the rails since the 1960s. Not Star Wars, but things like Clint Eastwood from the spaghetti westerns in the 1960s, and films like The Duelists, which was Ridley Scott's first film, or Once Upon a Time in the West, which is another great Sergio Leone western. And this material has never been seen on the collector's market. As I say, it's been in the same Italian costume house that provided it to the film decades and decades ago, and now it's surfaced in our auction for the first time. So for us, that's really exciting. For me personally, I came from a collecting background. I love the content, I love the material, I love seeing what is going to pop up for each auction, and we love working with it. We love getting it in, we love photographing it, cataloging it, researching it, making it look its best, the whole process that we go through as we prepare to present these things to market.
Do people ever come to you wanting to, auction off things? Like, what is that percentage versus you going out to get stuff?
No, they do. Yeah, I don't know if I know the exact percentage breakdown, but definitely, when we think about our sourcing efforts and where the content is coming from for the next auction, there's sort of a proactive process there where we're going out and looking for material and contacting people that we understand have material, asking them if they're ready to let anything go, or just searching, just looking to make new connections and asking them if they have anything that might be suitable for a prop store auction. And there's a reactive portion where some material fortunately is coming to us, especially when we're in the middle of one of our big auction campaigns. We're getting a lot of press. The press obviously drives eyeballs, drives engagement, makes people aware of Prop Store and what Prop Store does. And sometimes you get a call from somebody who worked on a movie and says, oh, I have something from that film, and I never realized that it would appeal to anyone else. I didn't realize it had a commercial value. So those are a lot of fun, and we do get some great cold calls here and there. We also get people who are coming to us just through our established network, meaning by a recommendation, really. If someone else within the film industry or maybe another collector has worked with Propstore in the past, makes a recommendation to someone that we didn't know previously, and we make a new connection that way.
A few years ago, I had seen a video of you in this costume house, and you had found Han Solo's Empire Strikes Back jacket. How did that ever get lost? You would think that Lucasfilm would have a very tight hold on all of their stuff.
Yeah, that was an interesting story. It wasn't actually me personally that pulled that one off the rail. I think it was Stephen Lane and Tim Laws in the UK. But I was sort of part of that process. And, I can tell you, I did the book Star Wars Costumes back in 2014. And researching that, one of the things that I got access to was John Marlowe's journals. And in and amongst those journals were notes on different suppliers and vendors who had produced materials for The Empire Strikes Back. And there was a small vendor within that. I think the name was Caledonian Costume House, or actually it was the name of the individual who owned Caledonian, which I'm going to say, it's been a while since I thought about this, but I think his name was Victor Somkowick. And connected the dots, did some research, figured out that he owned this place, Caledonian. They closed down many years later, and they sold their inventory to another costume house. And we were able to backtrack that and sort of put the pieces of the puzzle together, go and contact the current costume house that we thought might have some of this guy's older inventory. And we just said, look, can we come in and take a look? And they said, sure, but we don't think there's anything here that's recognizable. And I was sort of optimistic that maybe we would find Hoth Rebel Trooper pieces or pilot jumpsuits or something like that. And we didn't find those. There was none of that, unfortunately. But there was this one gray jacket, which looked like a Han Solo Bespin jacket. The interesting thing about it was Steven had actually handled from another source previously another Han Solo Bespin jacket. So when it first came off the rack, we thought, well, that can't be it because we've already seen it. Go study the film. It turns out there's two of them, right? You see two different jackets in the movie. And when you look, the chest pockets are placed in very different positions. Sometimes they're close to the opening of the jacket, and other times they're spread much further apart. And so this is sort of the process that we go through to, not only uncover this material, but to go do the deep dive research to figure out exactly how it was used. And it turns out both these Han Solo jackets that we've seen now are film used, can be screen matched, are absolutely in the movie. It both came from wildly different sources. So it's sort of a fascinating process that we go through. And look, not every story is that much of a success. It doesn't. They aren't all Han Solo jackets, but every now and then you do turn up with something really exciting like that, and it's a lot of fun when it happens.
You are the Indiana Jones of movie memorabilia.
Yeah, that was like a whole process you went through.
And I'm sure
amazing.
Very kind of you to say. We like that title. Yeah, we'll take it.
So what is the authentication process like on these pieces?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it really depends on how they've come into us. I think it always starts with asking about the history of the item. So we always want to know, how did it get from point A to point B? And sometimes you have a very logical, direct linear route there. For example, my father worked on the film. It's been in our garage for 40 years. You can go to IMDb. We check it out. Yes, the father did indeed work on the film. Maybe they're not credited. Maybe they're not on IMDb, but you can, establish another way, like looking at a unit list or whatever it may be, that they were indeed part of that production. That's a big piece of the puzzle, is just the history. Sometimes things have no history. It's just, I bought this at a yard sale or someone gave it to me. And that is trickier because, if you have strong provenance to start with, meaning you have a strong chain of ownership, then you feel good that the piece is going to be something, meaning it likely does relate to the actual movie, not a replica or something like that. If you have no provenance, then it's like, there's probably a higher likelihood that it isn't actually tied to the film. It is something fan made or a replica or something like that. So, you're looking at that piece of the puzzle, the ownership chain, and then you're looking at the physical construction of the item, right? Does it have the age that you would expect to see on it? Is it the right materials for the period? Does it have the proper patina? For example, today a lot of pieces are 3D printed. If someone showed you a piece from 2001: A Space Odyssey that was 3D printed and said it was in the movie, you'd go, this doesn't really add up, right? I don't think they were 3D printing in 1966 or whatever they made that film. So that's part of it. And then, we're able to do a lot of research now by actually going through like 4K versions of films and looking at things in great detail, frame by frame, to study them and really look at the specifics of every nuance of the item. A good example would be Stormtrooper helmets. We've managed to screen match a number of Stormtrooper helmets just based on the cutouts of the eyes within the helmet, because all those are hand cut, with an X-Acto knife out of the plastic, and you'll get variants. You'll have like the left eye waves like this, but then the right eye waves like that. And if you look at two helmets next to each other, you can see this one's cut like that and that one isn't. So it's sort of amazing how much research can be done now with things like 4K versions of the film, production stills, and just all the various other resources that we go to try to find reference.
Ironically, I think Stormtroopers might be the easiest thing, because you can look at the picture or the still from the movie and then look at your helmet and go, oh, wait a minute, he's got a scratch right here just like he did in the movie. And this is scratched right over here just like that. You can match up the scratches.
Yes, I mean, scratches are always helpful. Some things lend themselves really well to being screen matched. Anything that's weathered, anything that has got like a unique pattern or patina on it tends to lend itself really well to matching. We had an X-Wing fighter model a few years ago, and we were able to match that to production photos based on very specific weathering, like black overspray airbrush, that is simulating exhaust stains on the ship. and things like stitch lines can be very useful. So, if you can get real high res photos or close up shots of something like that Han Solo jacket, you'll have like a stitch line along the seam where all of a sudden it does a little wave like that. And then you can see it. And it's just so organic and so natural and so handmade that the odds of that being replicated are just, almost none. And it really proves that it is the item. So, a lot of collectors are seeking screen match. That's kind of the ultimate form of authentication within our world. Not everything is screen matchable. Just because a stormtrooper helmet cannot be screen matched doesn't mean that it isn't in the movie. With things like that, our general assumption is they filmed every single one that they made, in the crowd scenes. When you're seeing in the first movie, all the stormtroopers on the Death Star docking bay, you're seeing all they had. Because if they had more, they would have put them in the shot. Why would they leave stormtrooper costumes on the side when they're trying to make this shot look as complete and robust as possible?
Yeah.
How long does it take to authenticate an item in general?
It really depends. Some things you'll authenticate very quickly. Some things they come in the door and you spend 20 minutes looking at photos and you go, oh, there it is. It matches, done. Other things, sometimes you'll be on the fence and you'll go, well, it has these characteristics that suggest that it likely is authentic, but there's a couple of things here that we don't understand that we can't quite make sense of that give us pause. And then you might go out and try to talk to other people. For example, there's different experts within the collecting community who have really studied one film or one segment of films, and they can have useful information. Or, speaking directly to the people who were there, much like the process I went through doing the Star Wars costumes book, you'll contact costume designers, prop masters, special effects guys, people that work in the industry. You might get a prop that was rigged up for a specific effect, and you can tell that there's something very deliberate that's gone on here. They've added this little fitting here and this little piece at the back, but you don't understand how it works. And then you talk to someone who worked on the film and they go, oh, well, that's a rig that was designed to, tie that prop into a rail that it was going to slide down along so it fell into the right crack in the floor, whatever it might be, right? And so it just depends. Some things wind up taking a long time to authenticate. Other things you can authenticate almost immediately. And I guess the flip side of that is there are things that you can prove very quickly are not authentic. We get many people who contact us and say, I have a stormtrooper helmet that was used in Star Wars. And then they send you a photo and you see where it says on the back, Dom Post, copyright 1977, which means it is a Halloween mask and not something that was actually used in Star Wars.
That's hilarious. Well, the actual pieces that you've authenticated, these pieces are part of film history, so you'd think that studios would want to keep them. Has a studio ever tried to block an item or tried to get it back?
Every now and then there are issues with that. I think when you're talking about films like the original Star Wars films, the assets really were not tracked and managed in the same way that they are today. At that time in the film industry, all this material was just seen as byproduct. And in fact, on the first Star Wars film, things like the costumes were done as what they call make to hire, which means they're going to be made for the film, but the costume house is going to own them at the end of production so that they have them in their rental stock to be used for other productions. And they're able to therefore offer them to the initial production at a cheaper price because they know they'll get revenue out of them later. Same thing with things like the blasters, for example. They're built out of real world weapons that were rented out of the British gun house, a place called Bapty. And so the production never owned them. So, it's different today. From the modern Star Wars films, things are tracked and managed more carefully. They're closely monitored. They have a lot of uses outside of just the direct production uses. They're being put on tours, exhibits. They're used for marketing, promotional purposes. So a lot of the material that we're selling for modern films, not necessarily Star Wars, but for example, recent Star Trek productions like Star Trek Discovery or Star Trek Picard, there we're partnering with the studio or production company directly. They're giving the material to us en masse, and we're selling it on their behalf. I guess to go back to your initial question as to, do we ever have studios who say, hey, how come we don't have that? Or we're looking to get that back. It does happen every now and then. We have good relationships with most of the studios. Here and there have been pieces that studios wanted to have back in their archives. As an example, reference Star Trek again, there was a Captain Picard chair from the Next Generation that we had in an auction recently. And they said, look, that's something we really need for our archive. And we were able to work out a deal with the owner of that chair and the CBS Paramount Star Trek archive to actually place the chair back into the archive. So every now and then it does happen, but generally studios have their collection and they're fairly content with what they have. Some studios are actively looking to make acquisitions and repopulate or bring things into their archive that they never had, they never owned. It's really just a case by case situation.
Do you think it's getting harder to get some of these pieces now that these studios, they know that they can put these out on tour, bring it to Comic-Con or use it for sequels or TV shows? Is it harder to get stuff because they want everything goes back into a warehouse for a future reference for them?
It's really case by case. In some cases, yes. I mean, there are some recent films where there's just absolutely nothing on the collector's market because they are holding it. I think the flip side is, most studios will recognize at some point that they can't hold everything forever. It's just, they're in the business of making movies. They're going to continue to make more movies. Every movie produces assets. What are you going to do with those things besides continue to get bigger and bigger warehouses and store them? So, many studios understand that there's a good system, there's a good process that you can go through where you maintain a selection of the assets for your archive, and you release the selection for the fans to enjoy, to build fan engagement, to build awareness of the title, and to just let them be part of the caretaking process for future generations. The only other real option is to destroy things and to put them into landfills. And we're certainly all hoping that they're not doing that.
Yeah, it always crushes me to see the Elstree Studios
pictures,
the pictures of the X-Wings and Millennium Falcon pieces in their dumpsters. Oh.
Yeah, I know the photos you mean. And again, I think that just speaks to the mentality at that time, which is, these things are the byproduct. It's not the product. The product is the movie. They're desperately trying to get done the film, which is a tremendous challenge in its own right. And what happens to the assets later, it's just not as much of a focal point.
Yeah. Like what Anthony Daniels did with his C-3PO collection. Like, I can leave it in a box, or I can let it go to the collectors who can really enjoy them and display them.
Yeah.
And that was really it for Anthony specifically. I mean, that was a fantastic collection for us to handle. We had so much fun working with Anthony. He's such a great guy and such a legend in the world of Star Wars. And it really was that for him. It was, I have these things because they seemed important and worth saving at the time, but I've had them for many, many years now. They've been in boxes for literally decades. And what is their ultimate home, And at some point, it's time for someone else to just be part of the journey of caretaking these things. And look, nobody's going to have anything forever, right? We can't take it with us. So ultimately, everything is going to change hands and go on to a new owner. And I think it's, for a lot of people, it's just a question of when is the right time, when makes sense. And it's, it's a personal decision, but I have seen many people reach a similar conclusion, which is just that, these things should have their next life at some point and should go on to the next person.
Nice. So Brandon, what is your specific job at Propstore?
Well, it's really overseeing all of the U.S. operations. So, we're producing 2 of the EMLAs, which are the big multi-consignor live auctions that we do each year. We're producing 2 of those out of the US, one in March, one in August generally. And then we're doing one out of the UK, which is coming up next week, the London EMLA. And then we'll do anywhere from, 6 to 12 other auctions, some of which are also live auctions with full printed catalogs, some of which are online only auctions. We do some poster auctions that are poster specific. We do what we call single title studio auctions, which would be like the Star Trek sales I was referencing, say a Star Trek Discovery, and overseeing the production and curation of all that material, which is a big job and has a lot going on with it. And it's, it's everything leading up to the auction. It's producing the auction itself, and then it's all the back end fulfillment. We offer customers payment plans, so managing all the revenue that's coming in, the payments that are obviously going out to consigners, the fulfillment, shipping the product to the final customers. Everything sort of falls under my banner. So we have a big team that certainly couldn't do it myself. No one could. I think we have about 45 people that work at Propstore in the US, and then we have a team of 25 or 30 in the UK. Wow. It's a labor intensive business because every asset is unique. Every asset has to be handled in a unique manner, cataloged in a unique manner. Everything has to go through photography, research, copywriting, and then ultimately be assembled in the catalog in a very ideally curated and coherent manner to let these things shine. I mean, our job largely boils down to doing the very best work that we can for our consigners to make their items sing, make them shine, make them exciting, unlock their potential, and explain to a collector why they would be a great piece to own. And it's a big process to do that.
Well, you must have so many spinning plates every single day.
Yeah.
With all those responsibilities. Wow. All right, now let's talk about this coming auction. I would say the highlight piece is the screen-used Sand Trooper helmet from Star Wars. Of all the Stormtrooper helmets to own, this is the one. So can you tell us some information on this helmet and why it's so important?
I mean, the reason this is so wonderful is just because it's so specific. So it is the Sand Trooper in the film who the Jedi mind trick is performed upon and who tells Obi-Wan to move along, move along.
Move along. Move along.
And it gets great close-ups in the film, and you can match up every tiny nuance of the paintwork and the weathering to those close-up shots in the movie. And it may get better close-ups than any other Stormtrooper in the film, or certainly equivalent. And so that combination of having those close-up shots that you can match it to exactly, and being a Stormtrooper that has dialogue, which is rare, and being a Stormtrooper that interacts with the principal actors, Mark Hamill, Alec Guinness, and just its condition, the fact that it is unrestored, it's the original painted finish, all the little blue lines that you're seeing on the cheek tubes there are original. It's just a beautiful piece. I should point out there is some restoration work that's been performed. The ears are not original, although they are molded off of originals, and I believe the eye lens is also a replica. But when you look at it in totality, it's just an absolutely beautiful example of a first film Stormtrooper helmet that is character specific, and that gets a lot of Star Wars collectors pretty excited.
Yeah, I would say this is probably the most important because it was on all of the promotional items in 1977. The lunch boxes, the cards. I had this on a T-shirt. This one Stormtrooper was everywhere.
You're talking about the wide shot with the land speeder in it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
When they're rolling
it.
up to Mos Eisley, that they won publicity still.
I
of the
see.
Stormtroopers stopping the land speeder was on everything.
Wow,
Yeah.
so that's in your head.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what is the starting bid on this item?
Well, the starting bid is half of the low estimate. So you can see there on the screen, it's £125,000. This does have a reserve on it, and in most cases with our EMLA auctions, the reserve or the minimum viable sell price, potential sale price, is the low end of the estimate. So the reserve on this one is £250,000, or possibly thereabouts. Sometimes there's a small variance, but around that figure. And yeah, that's the range, £250,000 to £500,000 that we expect it to go for in the sale.
So what is reserve versus starting? Why are they two different?
Because the reserve is not always exactly equal to the estimate. So we do start the bidding lower, and the idea is we want to get bidding momentum going. We want to give bidders a chance to place lower bids. In some cases, if an item fails to meet the reserve, the consignor will elect to go back and sell it to the high bidder, even though it didn't meet the reserve. So it's some of the nuances of the auction process and the mechanics of how it functions.
Okay.
And where did this piece come from?
This was consigned in by a collector. So this was originally sold a number of years ago by someone who had ties to the film. I think they had a family member that had worked on the film. It actually appeared with a couple of other helmets at the same time. But it's been in the same private collection for well over a decade now. And, similar to the story I was telling with Anthony Daniels, that the gentleman that owns it has just decided that it's, he's enjoyed having it, but it's time for it to move on to the next owner. And, the other really interesting thing to point out here is it's not just this lot. This lot is wonderful in itself, but there is also a matching costume that is being offered alongside it, which is the next lot in the auction. So the same consignor actually owned the helmet, the costume, and the blaster. But when we talked about how to offer it, it ultimately made the most sense to offer it in components, because there are many collectors who already have a helmet in their collection, but don't have the costume, the body armor. And on the opposite side, you could have someone who doesn't have either. It's probably unlikely that someone has a costume without a helmet, but you could have someone who doesn't have either, who says, I want a helmet, but I don't need the whole thing, or I don't quite have the budget for the whole thing. And therefore, it opens it up. It makes it accessible to more total buyers to offer it piecemeal. And ultimately, the same buyer may pick up all three pieces and put them right back together, or it may be split up, and it may be that, this costume that's in the auction lives with a different helmet moving forward, and this helmet, the move along helmet in the auction is, stands by itself moving forward. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Hopefully in the next auction, you can have the backpack. Someone will dig that up somewhere.
That would be very exciting, because I do not believe anyone has ever seen an original Sandtrooper backpack. I don't even think they have any in the Lucas archive. So as far as I know, those have all been destroyed, sadly.
Oh, sad.
Now, what are some of your personal favorite pieces in this auction?
Look, I'm a Star Wars guy myself, so I love seeing that material. There's a lot of great content in this auction. The second day of the auction is music material. Within the music catalog, we actually have a big selection of Noel Gallagher guitars. I'm a big Oasis fan. There's actually a Noel Gallagher guitar hanging on the wall behind me there, if you can see it. So I'm an Oasis guy myself. That's exciting for me to see in there. The Indiana Jones pieces are fantastic. It's not always just the big obvious props like the Sandtrooper helmets. One of the Indiana Jones lots that came in for this auction is a set of stills that are from the on-set stills photographer. I think it's something like 325 stills, many of which have never been seen before. So for me, when I saw that for the first time and I got to go through those stills and just see so many images from the production that had never been seen, it was a real treat and a lot of fun. To pivot back to Star Wars, other things that stand out in my mind are things like the Hoth Rebel Trooper rifle. That was consigned in by a guy who got to visit the set as a kid and was gifted it during the making of Empire Strikes Back. I love that piece. There's a Yoda cane. There's a Death Star tower that's very nice. There's the Jar Jar head. I think you referenced that in one of your emails to me. That's the best Jar Jar piece I've ever seen. Maybe the only Jar Jar piece. There's not a lot out there that links to Jar Jar. There you go. You've got one already. Yeah. And this, and it's funny that you put the hat on, because that's essentially what this piece is. I mean, he wore it like a hat on top of his head to get the eye lines right? Because otherwise, and if you look at the stills of Ahmed Best during production, he also wore like a blank shield over his eyes to block out his real eyes, because you don't want the other actors connecting with your real eyes. You want them up here where Jar Jar's eyes are going to be, right? So I thought that piece was really fun. There's some great prequel lightsabers as well. A lot of nice Star Wars content in this one.
There's even a Star Wars adjacent content, and that would be Friends, the one with the Princess Leia fantasy.
Oh, yes.
Jennifer
Jennifer
Aniston Princess Leia outfit. When I saw this, I fell off my chair. It's like, how did you get this?
So this, it's another costume shop story. This was in a costume rental house in Los Angeles, a smaller one, not one of the major ones. They rented it in for Friends, however many years ago, 1996. And have had it ever since. And it's been slightly modified since then. But when you go in and study it, the research process that I was describing earlier, you see enough small, intricate, organic, handmade details that match up exactly to be incredibly confident that it is this exact one. And the costume shop owner who had owned the business for decades confirmed as well that this specifically was rented into the production of Friends. So yeah, it's kind of a story within the story. And it's funny how many people know this episode and know this story from Friends. So it'll be interesting to see, how this does.
I always thought it was so funny how she showed up in that costume, but didn't quite take the robe fully off. It's like, Jennifer Aniston, you have an amazing body. Just show it all off. But yeah, it's great.
Do you live here in Los Angeles, Brandon?
I do. Mm-hmm.
Then you know of Western Costume.
Yes.
In Burbank.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to go there all the time to get props for my films when I was doing them back in the 90s.
Okay.
And I was really unaware that these pieces were the same pieces that you could see in all these major films. I remember seeing Urkel's helmet from Planet of the Apes,
right,
and it would say Planet of the Apes. I just thought, okay, they're just identifying it. I didn't know this was the original helmet.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I would have stolen it, but I would have stolen that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing with Western is obviously there's an incredible amount of Hollywood history there, and they were involved with so many productions over the years. I think today, similar to the story with the film studios, they are curating content themselves, meaning they maintain a Star Room collection. And every now and then they're probably finding a piece just that has a label in it that says Steve McQueen or whatever it might say, and that goes into the star room to be preserved. So I think today there's a lot of focus on it, but 30, 40 years ago, it wasn't a big field collecting this material. And all these things, their primary purpose was just to serve physical productions, costumes and props. The number one thing you could do with them was put them back in the prop department and use them again on a future movie, or change it slightly, repaint it, and then use it on a future movie. And that happened again and again and again until, more recently people sort of said, hey, these things are culturally significant and I'd love to own them. And the collector's market was born out of that.
I'm not condoning taking anything that's not yours legally, but oh my god! And I was speaking to someone over at Western Costumes, and they were saying that all of our big pieces from Ghostbusters or these big films would suddenly disappear, and the person who rented it said, "I lost it. Here's $100 to replace it. I'm sorry."
Yeah, right. The loss and damage. Yeah, I mean, we're not condoning that either, but I have heard that was a practice that occurred in the 1990s. Yeah.
One of the things I was really excited about, Hook. I love the movie Hook, and you do have a Captain Hook wig that's actually used as Dustin Hoffman's wig, but then you also have the Hook, but it's a reproduction Hook, but it's by the same blacksmith who created the original Hook. So how does that work? Because I mean, I would be excited to get the Hook anyway, even if it's just a reproduction, but we've been talking about authenticating it, film used and all that. Why is this a reproduction?
Well, I believe this was made specifically for marketing purposes. So after the film came out, there were a number that were made to go on display in different places. I don't know whether it was an official studio marketing promo thing, or I think famously Planet Hollywood had a batch of these that were on display in their restaurants, and this may be one of those. But we do sometimes offer replicas. Obviously, we're very upfront about that, and they're labeled very clearly, as you see here, that they are replicas. There is still a big collector market for replicas, especially high-end replicas, say ones that were made by the original maker, which is the case here. I think this is made by an armorer named Tony Swatton, a metal worker who did them for the film. And, for a lot of fans or collectors, a replica may be the next best thing. If you can't get your hands on the film used original, to having a replica, especially one made by the same person that made it for the movie, is exciting. And I will say on the Hook subject, we did have a Hook in our last auction, which was a film used Hook, and it actually had a rubber hook end there. So I think that the engraved part at the base of it was aluminum with the engravings, but the hook itself was rubber, just obviously for on-set safety purposes.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, but for me, I mean, that hook is so iconic because it was used in all the marketing.
Oh, yeah, like that was the poster.
And yeah, when I saw, I don't know if it was a screen-used one Hook, but up at Lucasfilm, they had that Hook on display. I almost teared up seeing that. I was like, oh my God.
Well, that makes sense. They would have had one because of the ILM connection, and ILM obviously did the visual effects on Hook, so.
And you can't have the Hook without Dustin Hoffman's Hook wig.
Yeah, I mean, as wigs go, I feel like this is a highly recognizable and memorable one. It's huge. I'm unsure of the specific history of this one offhand, but it just very recognizable, and what a great character.
Yeah, awesome.
So now, if people want to bid on these items, what is the payment system? How does that work? And they Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, check?
Yeah, not necessarily Venmo specifically, but all the details are on Propstore.com. We try to make it as easy as possible for people to pay. The biggest thing that we offer is interest-free payment plans, up to 3 months, in some cases longer, depending on what the item is. But we take payment via check, via credit card, via wire transfer, cash, depending on the amount. There are many different ways to pay us, but I think the main thing that we try to do to make it easy for folks, like I say, is those payment plans. And there is obviously a registration process that takes place to participate in the auctions, but again, it's fairly simple and straightforward. All the details are at propstore.com, and if anyone ever has questions, just reach out to us, and we're happy to help you get through that registration process.
And the final price is not the final price because there's a premium on top of that, correct?
Correct. Yes. So we have what we call the hammer price, which is the final winning bid price. And then there is a buyer's premium, which is 26% that goes on top of the hammer price. And that's fairly standard in the auction world. That's how we as an auction house are earning our margin to pay the bills and keep the lights on and pay the staff that produce the auctions and all those good things. So there is a split commission, a commission that's charged to the seller, and then separately a commission that's charged to the buyer.
Wow, and that's, I mean, all this work you do that you've just talked about for the past half hour, that's what that's paying for, and that's incredible work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now this particular auction, it runs over the course of 4 days from November 14th through the 17th. So can you just give us a rundown how many items are up for sale, and does each day have a particular category?
Yeah, the days are somewhat specific. So I think in total there's 1,500 to 1,600 lots. And it really breaks down like this. Day 1 is going to be your highest value props and costumes from films and television. Day 2 pivots off film and television, is entirely music memorabilia. Both of those first 2 days are what we call live auction days. They're hosted from the BAFTA headquarters in central London. If folks are in London, you can show up and attend the auction in person. And then days 3 and 4, which are Saturday and Sunday over the weekend, they are online only. So the only way to participate in those is to bid online or via telephone. There's no in-person element to those. And the content that's being offered on days 3 and 4 is back to props and costumes from film and television, generally lower value pieces. So your day 1 pieces are going to be at the higher end of the price spectrum, and days 3 and 4 are going to be at the more affordable end of the price spectrum.
Now, if there's an in-person component to the auction, do those in-person people get like preference over people calling in or online, or how does that work?
They could get preference if if there was a heated bidding situation and 2 people tried to place the same bid at the exact same time, say one person's on the telephone, the other person is in the room on the floor, it's likely that the auctioneer would give priority to the in-person bidder. But really what tends to decide those contests is who's going to place yet another bid. So that tends to be what it comes down to. I think as to whether people attend in person or don't, it's really a geography thing. And, if collectors are close enough, it's a fun day out. We certainly invite anyone to come out and join us. The auction is an exciting environment. Even if you're not participating, it's just a lot of fun to see what these things sell for. But at the same time, we understand that not everyone is going to be in London next Thursday. And, you may want to bid via phone or via the internet. I think actually online bidding has come up a lot over the years as just people live such a digital life and spend so much time on their phones. They kind of go, well, why call in when I could just click the button on my phone? And we see more and more people bidding that way.
Now, you were saying earlier that the Sand Trooper the earpieces had been refurbished. How often do you need to refurbish an item, either sew something back up or fix part of the foam or a crack in the plastic?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, when it comes to restoration, it's really just a case-by-case situation. I think some pieces lend themselves to it very well. If there's a missing component that you can easily replicate without disturbing the integrity of what is there and what is original, then it can make sense to do that. The restoration that we don't like as much, that we see collectors shying away from, is things like total repaints. As an example, if someone walked in the door tomorrow with the Darth Vader helmet and it had chips and cracks and nicks all over it, the non-collector might say, "Oh, that doesn't look like it should. We should really fix that up. We should restore it. We should repaint it." But collectors love the history. They love the originality, even to some extent, at the expense of the aesthetic. So that means we're willing to live with some cracks if we know it's that original 40-year-old paint. If someone was to take it to a car body shop tomorrow and have it resprayed, you've really lost a bit of the essence of the thing, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Do you have a workshop there, or do you have to send them out to contractors?
Most of what we do is done by outside professionals. We work with a number of different people who are full-time industry folks. They fabricate props, costumes, creature pieces, models for the film industry, and they work with us on restoration as well.
Now, what piece has come through Propstore that has perhaps shocked you the most because of its age or scarcity?
Shocked me the most. That's a good question. I mean, I think certainly we come up with people who have very oddball things where it's just a strange thing to still exist. Sometimes they're collectible, sometimes they aren't. The most exciting ones are just the pieces that turn up that are very prominent, that are just really significant, and that we didn't know were out there before, and so things like in the auction that we ran back in August, we had an Indiana Jones fedora, and we've obviously handled Indiana Jones pieces in the past. We've even sold another Indiana Jones fedora in the past. We thought we had a pretty good idea of how many were out there, and they don't move a lot. Most of the people that have them have no interest in selling. And all of a sudden, this new one turned up, and it was right from the estate of a gentleman who was a stunt performer on the movie. Stunt doubled for Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, so we knew immediately the provenance was right. And then we went away and studied the movie, studied our reference library, and we were able to place it, not just as having been used by the stunt performer, but also having been used by Harrison Ford in certain scenes. So for something like that to walk in the door that, a month before we didn't even know existed, that's what gets us excited. And that's what's really, the most fun aspect of our jobs and what we do.
One of the pieces that really shocked me was this one right over here. The Don Post Studios Captain Kirk mask, pre-Michael Myers paint job.
Yes, yeah. And so this is not actually used in the Halloween film. It's sort of like a replica prop. It is the same type of mask that they used to create the Michael Myers mask for the Halloween films, but these are so scarce and sought after because of the Halloween connection in their own right that they're very collectible as well.
How funny.
Yeah, so this
is so creepy.
Yes, it is. That's why they use it for Michael Myers. So is this one here, this mask, is this a reproduction or is this an original Don Post Studios mask?
It is an original Don Post mask from 1975. It's just a reproduction in the sense that this one wasn't used in the Halloween movie, obviously. But it is a vintage period Don Post mask from the 70s, yes.
Wow, did this come in from Don Post Studios or did
I don't think so. I think it came from a collector on this one.
Wow.
You know what? John Carpenter should have left it with just this. This is frightening.
It is right. Yeah, that's fine.
Wow.
All right, now before we wrap up, I'd like to know something about you. How did you get into this? Because this is like the film lover's dream job because you have your hand in everything.
Well, yeah, I got into it through collecting, and I was a collector myself and great lover of the Star Wars films. I spent a lot of time researching those movies, doing things like going to visit the filming locations where they shot in California and later in Tunisia and places like that. And I just started trying to track down people that worked in the movies and make contact with them and kind of started my collecting that way. So I was very Star Wars centric. I collect from a number of different films and such over the years. But I do love Star Wars, and that is sort of an entry point for me on all of it. And, I started with Propstore in 2007. At that time, I was the first guy to start on the US side of it. So Stephen Lane had started the business in 1998. In London, and he'd been running it there for a number of years, but always wanted to have an office here on the US side. And so we opened it in 2007. At that point, it was very small space. We weren't yet doing auctions. It was a very small team, just a couple of us at first. And it's just gone on its own journey, organic journey as a business from there. And now we're 17 years down the road and in a much larger facility with a much bigger team and producing a number of auctions a year. So it's been a fun, enjoyable ride. And as I say, I'm a collector myself. So for me, I get excited about the content. I love seeing new content walk in the door. And, and I love seeing the excitement that collectors get out of owning these pieces as well.
What piece did you get from the Propstore auction that, maybe I'll bid on this one right over here?
I don't think there's anything for me in this one, but certainly over the years, I've picked up pieces here and there. I think maybe you can see in the background behind me, I have one of Ewan McGregor's lightsabers on the wall back there. That's from the Phantom Menace, and that's a really nice example of that prop. So I'm a collector, Star Wars collector, Indiana Jones collector. All the great movies that influenced me so much when I was younger. It's amazing to own pieces of those,
Well,
yeah.
Well, you are living the dream.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is there anything else that we should know about the upcoming auction that the listeners can go, oh, I didn't know that. I need to go on to this. I guess go to propstoreauction.com.
Yeah, propstoreauction.com or even just propstore.com will get you there. I think the main other thing that I would point out is just the depth and breadth of the auction, the fact there are over 1,500 items in total, and that you will see pieces from the same title on multiple days, meaning there's Star Wars product on day one. There's also Star Wars lots on days 3 and 4. So I encourage everybody to look through the catalog in detail and you never know what you might see in there that catches your eye.
Yeah.
When is the next one coming to the U.S.?
That'll be March 2025. We'll be back in the U.S.
And where in the U.S. will that one be?
We do them all from Los Angeles. So where are you guys?
Oh, great.
You guys are in
We're in Long Beach.
Long Beach,
Okay,
yeah.
there you go. So we've been doing them at the Peterson Automotive Museum in LA. So if you'd like to,
nice.
If you'd like to come up for the next one, look out for the dates, and we'd be happy to see you there.
Okay.
Well, most definitely.
It'll be a new experience for us.
Well,
Yeah.
I think this one auction comes at the right time because it's the holiday shopping time. A lot of stocking stuffers.
That's right. Send the link to your friends and tell them it's gift time.
That's right.
How many Stormtrooper helmets and Don Post Studio masks and Freddy
And
Krueger
hookups
hats?
can we have?
Yes, you had a big stocking, but let's go for it.
All right, Brandon. Well, where can our Skywalkers find you when you're not on the show? So on social media.
I would just encourage everybody to follow the Propstore social channels. We're very active there, and that's where you're going to see all of our content. We have a lot of great content that's going out now, covering the lots, including things like videos. We do sometimes mini interviews with people that were involved in the films. There's a lot of content out there. So just look up Propstore on the different social platforms. We're very active on Instagram, on Facebook, on X, and give us a follow and hopefully you'll see something you like.
Absolutely, at Propstore.
Well,
Okay.
thank you so very much. You answered so many years of questions.
Yeah, no, it's nice talking to you guys, and I appreciate you having me on the show. I hope everyone tunes in for the auction next week. That's the one other thing I haven't mentioned that I should have is the auction is also live streamed. So each day, even if you're not bidding, not participating, you can watch the live stream, follow the action, and see what things are selling for.
And that's on propstore.com.
Yes.
So in our upcoming Propstore Entertainment Memorabilia live auction, I am incredibly excited about the material that's come to us from the Ray and Diana Harryhausen Foundation. This is material that has never been offered to market before. So you can see some of the incredible artifacts here behind me in the display cabinet, but in total the collection includes things like autographed posters, his original hand annotated scripts, model miniatures and lighting stand-ins, as well as some of his hand-drawn production designs. So the piece I'm going to talk to you about right now is this piece right in front of me, which is the lighting stand-in miniature made by Ray Harryhausen for the Golden Voyage of Sinbad. This is the Hindu goddess Kali. I think this particular piece is extra special because it's noted in some of the literature about Ray and his work on this particular film, that this was something that he really wanted to achieve, this multi-armed goddess moving and wielding these swords all at the same time, simultaneously. But of course, technically, that was a major challenge for him. But I think anybody who's seen the movie will appreciate just the skill that was required to do that and the beauty of the finished product as well. It's really an exceptional sequence.
Well, that wraps up episode 490 of Skywalking through Neverland. 10 more episodes to 500. We want to give a huge thank you to Brandon Alinger of Propstore, who answered so many burning questions about how the Propstore auctions work. And we want to thank all you Skywalkers for watching the show, for listening to the show, for watching and playing our brand new YouTube trivia game show every week on the Skywalking Through Neverland YouTube channel.
And you can find us on socials every week. We are at Skywalking Pod. Also, do you have things you want to share? Well, we do, so you can join us every Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific, or other times if we decide to go on different days of the week. But usually it's Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific on YouTube as we share things we've done the past week. And we also invite you Skywalkers to come on, time permitting, and share something that you've done or share something that you've just added to your collection.
Now, are you interested in all of our books, our library of books? Well, autographed copies of Today in Star Wars History, Part 1 and 2, and Skywalking Through My Fandom, the interactive notebook, are now available on skywalkingthroughneverland.com/book.
Now, would you like to support Skywalking Through Neverland? Do you listen every week or watch our videos and, really enjoy the content? Well, you can consider supporting us through the Skywalking Force, which is our Patreon. The Skywalking Force has access to bonus content in the form of Zoom discussions, in the form of coupon codes to use for our books. This bonus content begins at only $5 a month. So head to skywalkingforce.com, have a look at the options available, see what works for you. And we want to give a huge thank you to those of you who are part of the Skywalking Force.
Now, we also want to thank our sponsor, Small World of Vacations, for their continued support. Thinking of a trip to a Disney park or a Disney cruise? You can fill out a Get a Quote form at smallworldvacations.com today. Their vacation planning service is free, so check them out and tell them Skywalking Through Neverland sent you.
Now, we are part of the Skywalking Network,
Skynet,
where you can find other great shows like Talking Apes,
the Max Effects Podcast,
the Neverland Clubhouse,
Totally Tell Me Everything,
Star Wars Ologies,
and the YouTube shows Collectopolis and Today in Star Wars History. Now, don't forget to stick around for bloopers and other fun bits that didn't make it into the show. And
always remember
to get your paddles ready for the Propstore auction.
And
Neverland on Alderaan.
I'm going to have you do your clappy claps because
okay.
I'm looking forward to snack time.
Oh.
And everyone else, if you're watching, and what is your favorite snack?
Now, what is the authentic? Yeah, what is the authentic? Why can't I say this word? You say it.
Sure.
Hey, look at those names to the left. They are part of the Skywalking Force, our Patreon.
Become a producer yourself and check out all the Disney Plus themed bonus content available depending on the level you subscribe.
Become a member of the elite Skywalking Force at skywalkingforce.com.